All right, hello and welcome everyone. It is a awesome Tuesday, August the 25th. I hope you guys are doing well. We are here to review episode 3 of SeaQuest season 1, which was called The Devil's Window and not The Devil's Widow, as I mistakenly put it in at the very beginning. And John was like, Matt, I think you got the name there wrong, which it kind of makes more sense. I was really confused as to why this episode was called The Devil's Widow when it had like no widows in it. But Devil's Window, it made a lot more sense. And as we do get things going, I just want to make a quick disclaimer here, guys. I know that there has been some drama going on in our little community here the past 48ish or so hours. Just leave it at the door. I honestly don't care which way you think. Everyone is welcome here on the stream, and we're here to have just a good time. So we're just gonna leave all that by the door. That's all I ask. I don't care which side you come down on. Just whenever you do talk about it, which I ask that you don't do here, but in general, just say what the other person said. Don't be making up statements for them. Just argue their own positions instead of strawmanning. So with that out of the way, guys, let's talk about this SeaQuest episode. And hello to Thomas Potts. I'm glad that you're ready. You were here a little early, my friend, but I'm glad you were. I like seeing you around. Hello to Robert Green and Tiki of Doom. SeaQuest, indeed. Very excited to be reviewing this series with John DiMarco. John, how are you doing today?
Good, thanks. Hello, everyone. Glad you could join us.
I know we're doing it a little bit later, but gosh, honestly, it's a good thing we did today. When I was putting my daughter to sleep, I accidentally fell asleep before she did. And so all of a sudden, I woke up from getting a text message like, Matthew, what's going on? So I was, it was very good that we didn't start earlier. And Cinnamon Bunny, how are you doing? Josh Street, boo, and hello, I hate the dolphin. Yeah, I wasn't, yeah, so John, why don't you go ahead and give us a little recap of this episode? And we'll see what what we have to say about it after that.
Well, at the beginning, that SeaQuest has a famous scientist on board, and they're studying something called a black smoker, or also known as a hydrothermal vent. They're curious to see how life can survive around it, despite what it's apparently poisonous chemicals that it emits. So they have this experimental device they're going to put down to study it. But in the meantime, while they're in the process of studying it, Darwin, the dolphin, that is Matthew's favorite character, somehow gets sick, and he needs specialized treatment. So the captain has to decide, is he going to proceed with the scientific investigation, or is he going to break off and try to save his dolphin?
So, and that was the opening stinger for the episode. So it made for kind of an interesting premise that they are taking this kind of deep sea lab, and they're going to set it right on top of this hydrothermal vent, which they call Black Smoker throughout the episode.
Smoker of color, please.
Yes, excuse me, Smoker of color. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be so like 1960s on everyone in the stream. Smoker of color.
Well, your racism is very renowned around these parts.
It's true. Everyone knows that I am the worst person out there and a horrible racist. It's unfortunate truths. I wish it wasn't true, but the video evidence is there for everyone to watch. And hello to the multi-gunman. How are you doing? Is this a Kurogan-only live stream? No, everyone is very much welcome. And hello to Darren Wagner. SeaQuest, Black, laugh out loud. No, I'm enjoying SeaQuest. I really am. It's been a long time since I watched it, and it is not disappointing me so far. In fact, in this opening stinger, the way they open up is it really got a good chuckle out of me, because it seems like one of the during school specials you'd watch in science class, where you had the narrator talking, the ocean, the sea of life, the backbone of Earth's, whatever. And it's going on, and then it zooms out, and you realize it's just the guest star for the week, a scientist. What was his name? Like Roy or Raleigh?
Yeah, Raleigh, I think.
Raleigh. Okay. And it turns out he was just extremely enthusiastic about the work he did. And he was going on and on about it. And he thought he was just going on and on about it to Lucas, the 15, 16-year-old science whiz kid. But Lucas leaves, and he keeps going on in this over-the-top theatrical way of talking. So he's just like this guy who's really, really into his work, and it made for a really kind of funny opening. So it actually is holding up. Darren, have you been watching it? And let me go ahead and give our weekly, and yes, everyone down in the is saying where to stream it, Peacock. So let me give our weekly plug for Peacock, who is not a sponsor, but hey, I'll shill out if you want to, Peacock. Just contact me, LifeWithMatt_YT on Twitter. And yeah, we can work something out, I promise. But it is on Peacock. It is free. Oh, hey, Uncle Remus, long time no see. Yeah, it's absolutely free. In fact, I use a program called PlayOn, which lets you record stuff for subscriptions that you have. So Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Hulu, anything that you pay for a subscription for, you can download the series off so you have offline access for it. Now, to be completely on the up and up, you need to delete that content if you ever get rid of the subscription service, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not your daddy. I'm not going to tell you what to do. So let's see. And hey, Ensign Ricky, how are you doing tonight? Indie Tiger, guys, I'm glad to see everyone coming over here. And DJ Odyssey, I will say hi to you, my friend. I just got to get down on the list. You got to give me a second. And Captain Trek, good evening to you. I hope that you're doing well. Okay, so that was the opening stinger. Interesting idea for the episode. And we see also that Darwin got exposed to this carcinogenic compound because they mentioned that this smoker of color vent in the ocean, it's full of just the most toxic compounds you can imagine, and yet somehow life flourishes there. And then they're pulling up like a sample of this worst bacteria on the planet ever for some reason, and Darwin gets exposed to it. But we only know that. The people of SeaQuest don't know that. So what happens once we join them back after the credits roll?
I think you think about it more than they do.
Oh, and thank you for Darwin and your kind donation. Darwin doesn't like Cinnabon. Cinnabon bad to horses. Thank you, Darwin. I appreciate it.
Well, if I recall, after this stinger, they come back and SeaQuest has this large observation platform kind of suspended below the ship, and they have to descend to the bottom so they can place it over the this hydrothermal vent they want to study. But it's hard for the ship to maneuver through the different layers with this thing attached to the bottom of them.
Yeah, and I wondered as I watched this scene, I wish I could get Darren's input and see if that is something that a actual submarine has to worry about as it descends, or what's the correct term for going up in the water? Rises? It seems like they got a better word for that than rises on a submarine, but I don't know. I wasn't in the Navy. But I was curious if he ever, like on an actual submarine, did they have to worry about, as you change thermal layers, any of like shear stress going on the sub caused by like an underground river that you hit because there's thermal differences. Ascend, yeah, thank you, Ensign Ricky. Ascend, the opposite of descent. I'm smarter than I look sometimes, I swear, but most of the time I'm only as smart as I look. It can't be helped. So as they're going down, they're descending, they hit this thermal layer, and obviously it's a huge ship. I mean, we talked about this last week. That is something like 300 meters long and at least 5 decks tall, if not taller. Because they haven't shown us like a side cutout the way Star Trek does. We're only making inferences based on something they directly say or based on kind of some visual clues that we get throughout the episode so far. And then attached to that at the bottom is this huge, kind of moonlander bottom looking undersea platform. And so it's the first to hit this thermal layer. So they're just getting shear stress going across it, and they start to kind of get off kilter, and that's just increasing the shear stress on the ship. And it looks like they're going to break apart, but somehow they manage to hold together and get all the way through the thermal differences, and everyone's happy at that point. So what happens next there?
It's at that point where both the captain and one of his officers, O'Neill, can sense that there's something wrong with Darwin. So when they go check him out, they can see that he's sick. So from there, they have to guide him through these tubes they have in the ship for him to swim in, get him from the bridge down to the area where the doctor can examine him.
And okay, so did I miss something there, by the way? Because out of nowhere, they bring in this Darwin is telepathic kind of plot point into the show. And I was honestly really confused at this point. Like, I felt like I had missed an episode or two.
I mean, I don't think you missed anything. There was this kind of thing they just kind of dropped in there.
Okay.
I mean, they do have, I don't know if it's him specifically or some of the other characters, because they do deal with telepathy among humans later on in the show.
Okay. Huh. Okay, well, I when we got to this scene, at first, the guy who's responding is Tim Raimi. That's the actor's name, right?
Yeah.
Not Sam Raimi's brother. So yeah, Tim Raimi, who I forget his character's name, to be honest.
That is O'Neill.
O'Neill. I should remember that one real easy. I love Stargate. But O'Neill is the communications officer. So Darwin's tapping against the glass there in the bridge, trying to get their attention. And at first I just thought, okay, he's responding because he has really sensitive hearing. And it wasn't until they're in this underwater passageway and they come up for air in this one little bubble area that I realized that he comes out and said, I heard him speaking in my mind. And I'm like, okay, wait, I am so lost right now. This wasn't even on my radar that telepathy was part of this universe, and all of a sudden we got telepathy. Oh, and John, you're putting the deck plan of SeaQuest in there. How about, let's see if I can actually get this to pull up correctly. Ever since Windows did an update, Chrome has not really been kind about opening links for some reason. Okay, so there we go. Let's see, can I get this bigger? So yeah, there are, up at the front, it looks like that's the bridge. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 true decks. And then this this red area that kind of sticks down below the 5th deck. Which I'm not sure what that one is yet.
Yeah, that's the launch bay in the center.
The launch bay, okay. Yeah, it's written right above it. Maybe if I actually bothered to read a schematic, I could tell. Okay, so yeah, this is a massive, massive ship. So they're going through the tunnels. They mentioned that apparently O'Neill is telepathic with Darwin, the dolphin. And they're kind of lost in here, right?
Yeah, they're having trouble navigating because obviously there's no directions inside the tubes.
Which actually, so when he made that line, I laughed at that. Because usually you have the captain who, even though this is the flagship of the fleet and it's brand new, they've just taken all the time in the world to study the schematics. So even though it's their first time in the Jeffries tubes, they know how to navigate it perfectly. And so I thought that's what was going to happen, that O'Neill and Bridger were going to go into the tubes that Darwin swims around in and just immediately get to the sick bay for dolphins. But they get lost. It really made me laugh. Like it was a moment that made me feel like the characters were more genuine. Like, hey, these are real people, and they're not, someone who memorizes everything instantly. So eventually they do make it to, there's got to be a better term than sick bay for dolphins, but
I think they call it sea deck.
the sea deck. Oh yeah, sea deck, and it's actually spelled out SEA and not like the number C or number C. Oh gosh, guys, it's gonna be one of those streams clearly. So not the number C deck, but the color C. So anyway, they do make it there, and Nurse Ratchet begins to try and figure out what is going on. And I apologize, I don't remember the characters' names yet, so I'm making up names as I go along here.
Yeah, so the doctor examines Darwin, but you can't figure out what it is. Could be a virus, could be bacteria. You just know he's in bad shape. So Captain Bridger calls up a friend of his who's a dolphin expert, and he doesn't know, so the only way for him to check is for him to take Darwin to him so he can examine him, and maybe he can figure out what's wrong with him. The problem is that the scientist they have on board, who's been looking forward to this research, which is like the crowning experience of his career, is insistent that they don't leave. And how would you dare you do this just for a dolphin?
Okay, so what was your take on this kind of plot line? Like, did you feel that the scientist was being really unfair in placing the science platform over the life of the dolphin, or do you feel like it was kind of ridiculous that they were abandoning the mission to take care of Darwin?
Well, I can kind of see it from both points of view.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it from the scientist saying that this is just an animal, and my science is more important to this. Well, of course, most would say if it was a human crew member, without a doubt, they would break off if it was necessary to try to save his life. I guess the issue is because it's a dolphin and not a person. But, for someone like Captain Bridger, that dolphin is basically his family.
Mm-hmm. His last family, even.
Yes.
So I guess that's an interesting point. How would your feelings change if this was, say, Commander Ford? If Commander Ford had been exposed to this stuff and was non-responsive, so they couldn't figure out what he had been exposed to, what was going on, but there was a chance that if they got him to a specialist somewhere nearby, he could live. I guess at that point, would you feel like there'd be more justified, or you feel like it would be like, okay, yeah, absolutely, we're going to be abandoning the platform and just going?
Yes, that's how I would feel about it, yes.
Okay. I guess I would too. One of the things I did wish in the episode is that I kind of had a better feel for the stakes with the platform, because I never felt like it was an issue of extreme urgency that this platform be in place. Like there was no window we were shooting for, no deadline. It was just this scientist really wanted to get it done right now.
Yeah, if it had been an issue where this thing only happens like once every 100 years or something, it's a special event, I can understand his urgency more.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's something that could just wait a few days so you can come back.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a minor nitpick I had with the episode. I feel like it didn't establish the stakes quite strong enough. Yeah, so then with this fighting going on, or this disagreement that the scientist Raleigh wants the mission to go forward, where he place the platform and do his science first, going to take care of Darwin. He makes a call to Admiral Paris, whose actual name was something with an N, right? Admiral Nechev?
Noyce.
Oh, I was so not close at all. I had the first letter, so we'll work with it. Tiki of Doom, I should look up Ratchet on the Urban Dictionary. I think I should not. I don't want to know anything on the Urban Dictionary. That's a word that I use from time to time, lest I be utterly embarrassed, as I was last week on the virtual pub. And hello, Jeff Franklin. Glad to see you're here in the stream. So, I guess when he contacted Admiral Noyce, did you feel like Raleigh had a fair point there, that the captain was kind of going off on his own, or do you like as the series goes on, like it doesn't make more sense that Bridger is kind of given unilateral authority over the operation of the ship?
Yes, I would say that's pretty the case most of the time. He typically gets a very wide latitude because he gets stuff done.
Okay.
And I felt like in this case the admiral totally had his back, and basically you can wait and you can get back to it whenever he's done.
Mm-hmm. Which is an interesting take. Like, they established in the first episode that these are close friends, and the admiral didn't want Bridger just wasting his life away on an island by himself with the dolphin. He wanted to bring Bridger back and attack the issues that are facing the world, and not just by being in charge of the SeaQuest, but like actual scientific research type stuff. He didn't want Bridger to be living with regret. So it did kind of make sense for this really absolute trust that you see the admiral give him. Although honestly, I would have loved to have seen the admiral give him his full and complete trust, and then like a scene or two later, have the admiral call him up and be like, "What do you think you're doing?" Give the full trust in front of the civilians and your subordinates, and then just lay into him privately. Be like, "Okay, this is not okay. This isn't your pleasure yacht. This is a UN fund or UEO. I think that's what it is. UEO, United Earth Oceans.
Yes.
Okay, UEO funded ship, and if we give you a mission, you better have a really good reason for abandoning it." And then you could have had like this back and forth about, Darwin isn't just a aquatic sea life creature. He's thinking, he's feeling, he has joy and sadness, pleasure and despair, all that kind of stuff. And that would have been a really interesting take on a show, which I think about this more than I probably should be, but whenever I'm enjoying a show and I come to a moment like this, my first thought is like, "Ooh, how could I have made this better?" So I don't want people in the chat to get the wrong idea. I actually enjoyed the episode, but I did have a few slight nitpicks, and that would have been one little tweak I made to it. So we have this scene with the admiral. Dr. Raleigh is like about to burst a blood vessel during this whole thing. and he's finally like wrestled down, and they put on like this soothing music and show him this coral leaf that's being picked up on one of the whiskers. They're kind of camera drones that float around the ship, and he's like being forced to calm down because he's just going crazy that they're doing this. So take it from there. What starts happening after that?
Well, they finally get out to this dolphin expert, and he checks out Darwin, and he can't really figure out what's wrong with him either. But he says if something doesn't change, he's probably going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's sad about that. But finally, Dr. Raleigh comes along and says, "While I don't agree with what you're doing, I understand why you're doing it. So basically, do what you have to do to try to save him." And the only idea they can come up with is try to find Darwin's family, because they're in the same area where he was found, apparently. And that maybe by releasing him back to his family, they can figure out something to do for him.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, because the whole time, Darwin had been giving this cryptic statement. Light into darkness, or light is darkness alone. Something along those lines. Very cryptic. They couldn't figure out what's going on. Lucas, the one who built the dolphin translator, was frustrated because he felt like the program was failing. But for whatever reason, they just couldn't translate whatever this concept that Darwin was trying to get across to them. And it's there where they're all having some beers. Even Lucas is offered a beer by the dolphin's doctor, who after a gentle reprimand from Bridger, ends up getting him like a non-alcoholic Jamaican ginger beer. So it has the kick, but none of the alcohol. And they're talking things over about Darwin's dying. Raleigh makes a line that that you said about I don't agree with it, but I at least understand it. And through this, they mention this cryptic line that Darwin keeps saying, and the dolphin doctor makes the comment, well, that's deep. Knowledge is light, and they begin to piece together what Darwin has been trying to say this whole time about how uh, knowledge is light, and the inverse of knowledge, or the absence of knowledge, is darkness. So Darwin feels like he doesn't understand what's going on. That's what light into darkness means. And alone is he's talking about he feels isolated and he just wants to be back with his family. So they do release him, which is something that O'Neill wanted to do from the very get go. From the very beginning, O'Neill said we just need to let him go. And so after this exchange, Bridger accepts the fact they need to let him go, and they begin to look for Darwin's family. And they actually mentioned some science that I didn't know, and that's one of the fun things about the show is they actually drop science in from time to time. And that's that male dolphins typically leave the pod and their click pattern changes, or their click pattern stays the same so that they can find their pod again. Whereas female dolphins stay in the family pod and their click changes alter slightly so that you can differentiate between a mother and a daughter dolphin, which, random bit of knowledge they dropped on me. They did it in an interesting and organic way. So there's that. But eventually they do find Darwin's pod, and what happens at that point?
Well, at that point, they can tell Darwin's excited that he and this pod can sense they're close to each other. So they let Darwin go, and he swims out to join his family. And they can see him swimming off together. And they don't know if he's going to survive or not. But if at the worst, at least he'll die with his family, is what they were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So that being done, they go back to finish the scientist research.
And that's they get the, like, I guess we rejoin them with the platform in place, and it's kind of implied that at the beginning of the episode that they were able just to cut it loose and it land exactly where it was supposed to land. Which, okay, I'll cut you some slack on that, some narrative slack, even though the idea of dropping something from quite a bit ways up and it landing exactly where you wanted it to through water is laughable. But okay, we'll work with it. And for some reason, they're trying to again get a sample of the toxic compounds from the vent.
Yeah, so while they're bringing these samples of toxic chemicals back to the ship, the dolphin doctor calls up the ship's doctor and says, "You've been working at a black smoker, haven't you?" Because he's identified some of the bacteria that Darwin was exposed to. And he said, "If you got any samples, don't open it up. Basically, all these toxins are going to be released into the atmosphere, and it's going to be really bad."
Mm-hmm.
So Bridger's down there on the sea deck. He's about to open a sample container. Then all of a sudden, Darwin appears and knocks him into the water before he can open it.
Which did they? And yes, sorry, Thomas. Smoker of color. Let's make sure that we are sensitive, please, John.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're rubbing off on me.
I know. You know, it's like the Bible says: "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." You hang out with the wrong crowd, bad things start happening, John. I apologize. But I wonder, now that I've been made aware that Bridger is the same actor as the actor from Jaws, I was trying to figure out if they were trying to have this be like a Jaws moment with Darwin jumping out of the water and hitting him. But I don't think it was. It would have been funny if they had done like a doo-doo kind of two-note progression right before it happened, but he just gets basically tackled by Darwin, and also Darwin's mom shows up with some seaweed.
Yeah, they study the seaweed, and they say it has antibacterial properties, and that they gave this to Darwin, and that cured him. Mm-hmm. They compare it to some kind of dolphin medicine.
Yeah, and let's see, the nurse or doctor, the female doctor, which I'll try to remember these characters' name as the series goes on. I promise. She
Isa.
Isa.
Her name is Dr. Westphalen.
Okay, so Dr. Valen, she makes a comment like, yeah, there's clearly some bacteria or clearly the seaweed must have grown near a black smoker, and there are antibodies in it, and the dolphins knew this is what Darwin needed, and they have a line like, well, how do they work that out? They can't even dive deep enough to get to any sort of seaweed growing next to it. And it's left open-ended like that, which was a really interesting way of taking things. Like, it was kind of like nature found a way to survive kind of situation. Which I know they didn't mean it this way in the episode, but John, I think that you would agree that God has ingrained knowledge pertaining to a species' survival into each species. It's certainly not complete. Animals, be they human or otherwise, aren't perfect things, and sometimes they eat something or do something that ends up getting them killed. That's why we have the Darwin Awards. But I like the fact that the episode took it where, yeah, you know what? Maybe sometimes people don't know everything. Maybe there are still wonders out there to behold in the ocean, within nature, and it just so happened that the dolphins have learned to, whenever a dolphin is sick, you eat this and you get better. Maybe they don't know that, this is specifically for being exposed to a thermal vent, but they do know when you're sick, this is what you do, and you get better, hopefully. And so I thought that was a fun way of doing it, because usually the protagonist would have the aha moment. They would go, this is what happened, and I found this specific bacteria, and by doing this new medical procedure, I'm able to cure it. And they didn't do that, and that was fun. And let's see, is that how the episode ended?
Oh, there was one more part. I don't think we mentioned yet that part of the scientist experiment was something called a magma buoy. They launched into a lava flow to study volcanic eruptions, and they let that go as the episode ends, I believe.
Yeah, it was like since it was too hot to make a steel container, they'd done like this ceramic container, and they're launching it into a magma flow, and they're like, we have no idea where it's going to pop up, but eventually it will pop up, and we'll be able to study the data of how it moved through the magma and get a better understanding for continental drift and where earthquakes would happen. Which, hey, that's a pretty fun idea. I have no idea if it's realistic or not, but it was a fun idea. So how did this episode land for you? Like, one, just, did you enjoy it, did you not? And two, in comparison to the first episode, did you enjoy it as much, more, less? What was your take?
I would say I enjoyed it for the most part. I wouldn't consider it one of the best episodes of the series, but I considered it a solid entry. I liked the realistic science topics that they bring up. Mm-hmm. Also, if you see it in here, in this episode, they start in the credits, they'll have a little science info dump, based on what stuff they talked about in the episode.
Yeah, that was very interesting. They went out of their way to mention that the thermal vents was something that they discovered in 1979, and how amazing it was that even though it is hot enough to melt lead, which lead isn't exactly the highest temperature metal out there, but still that's really hot, and even though these areas are filled with toxic gas, there's still life there. And honestly, be you Christian or atheist, that's truly a thing of wonder that there is such a diverse amount of life out there, that even in this extremely harsh environment, you have life thriving somehow. And honestly, they tied it in at the beginning of the episode when Dr. Raleigh was talking about it. That he was saying, you take these exact same chemicals that exist in this smoker of color, and you take that from an industrial plant, and it dumps into the river, and life in the river dies, and yet for some reason life thrives here? Is it the salt water? Is it something else? We don't know, but we want to find out. So I thought that was interesting because if this series was done today, you wouldn't have such a balanced sense of environmentalism, where they recognize that a chemical here kills, but that same chemical over there somehow breeds life. And so I'm really being impressed by its very balanced tone it's taking with real science and environmentalism, because this is clearly an environmentalist show. Like they have a high attitude of taking care of the earth. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Just saying, like that's clearly one of their priorities in the show.
Yeah, so as you've mentioned, that they do this more down the road, is they do show the dangers of taking it too far, where they have like environmental terrorism.
Yeah, and I remember they mentioned that in the first episode, and I want to say the only other episode I remember in the entire series, which I mentioned last week, is the one with the giant air filters, which that I want to say is eco-terrorists try to take that down in the episode, which I may be wrong. It's been 2 decades or something since I've seen this, let's be honest, guys. But I'm pretty sure it was environmental terrorists that did it, and I don't think you could do eco-terrorists in a series anymore. And I really miss that we used to be able to talk about a wide variety of subjects in a show and look at a wide variety of opinions and views, and we don't get that sort of nuance. That's one of the things I'm really loving about SeaQuest, is that we do get more nuance than what you get in a modern show. So in terms of silly things, I think I mentioned this already, but I did have to laugh that this was a Darwin-centered episode. Right after I made a big deal about, oh gosh, Darwin is my least favorite character. I hope we don't do too much with Darwin anymore. And then we had this episode. What were some of your favorite parts of the episode?
I mentioned the scientific stuff already. Just I also like the focus on characters. Then we talked about there's kind of, I guess you call it a moral dilemma. What's more important? Is it saving the dolphin or continuing the scientific research that could, in theory, have benefits to an uncounted number of people, like if they find cures for diseases and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
So I can kind of see both points of view there.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned all the things I really enjoyed already, kind of as we went through and talked about the episode. One of the things I did enjoy, the one thing I haven't mentioned, is that I really like the idea that higher concepts didn't translate from Darwin. So you got this universal translator set up for dolphin, and that already is amazing. But then it doesn't translate knowledge and lack of knowledge and loneliness into words that we would expect. And it made me think of the episode Darmok from TNG. You know, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. And, Jalad, his eyes open. Where the universal translator, it translated their words, but without a context for the meaning behind those words. It was just meaningless jargon. And it wasn't until Picard went down to the planet with, what are they called? The Children of Tama, I think was the race's name.
Yes.
Until he went down there and he figured out the backstory, the meaning behind the words, that's when the episodes start to come together, and you were able to pair the universal translator with these higher concepts. So I like the idea that even though we're able to translate dolphin, maybe it's not going to be able to translate everything perfectly. There's still going to be some things that it's not perfect at doing. So that was cool. And Jeff Franklin is buffering for you. You know, I am getting a warning right here that I've been having like 17% drop frames for some reason. I'm not sure what's going on with my internet today. I don't think I have a lot going on in the background. So I'm not sure what's causing the slowdown on my computer. Let me try closing out of Skype. I don't think that's what's causing problems, but Yeah, so sorry. If it's buffering, Jeff, I do apologize for that. Hopefully, hopefully once the stream is done and YouTube puts everything together, it won't be quite as stuttery for you. Which I really hope that um, it doesn't look like it's stuttering too bad over there in live. But maybe if I lower that down a little bit, I'll have some stuff cleared up there. Anyway, do you know what they really meant by the episode title? Oh, I'm showing you the wrong stuff. There we go. The Devil's Window.
I mean, I don't know exactly, unless it's just trying to connect that to the poisonous chemicals in this hydrothermal vent, or maybe just the connection to the lava itself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know for sure.
I as I showed earlier, the original thumbnail for this week I labeled as The Devil's Widow, which I tried doing Googling on what on earth is the Devil's Widow, and the most I could find was a Irish folklore story, and then a song about how there was a widow who couldn't be completely pleasured, and the devil tried to fill the task, and he failed, and so he spends the night shuddering in fear of this old Irish woman who can't be satisfied in, in life by a man. And I'm like, I have no idea how this is supposed to relate to the episode. I don't think this is the reference. But the Devil's Window, I guess it makes a little more sense because like they're trying to peek down into this magma, which is, I guess, kind of like this hellish landscape, maybe. But I don't know. Another one of those small nitpicks, and I guess I did have several smaller nitpicks for this episode. Like the pacing wasn't quite as strong, quite as tight as the first episode, where there were a couple moments like when they were swimming through the tunnel with Darwin, and they get lost. I kind of felt like that scene, and I told you already, I enjoyed that moment, but it was very slow in the episode, where you could have taken that scene away and it wouldn't really have impacted the story too much, because they do reveal that O'Neill telepathically heard Darwin, but then they talk about it again later, so you don't lose any sort of plot points by removing the scene. And then they also had a pacing moment where when Bridges first calls up the dolphin doctor, he brings his mom onto the camera because everything is view screens in the future. So he brings on his mom and he brings on two of his brothers or two of his cousins or something, and then Bridges is like, "Well, my dolphin is dying." He's like, "Okay, I need to take this in the other room," and they have like this 20-second delay where the doctor's going to the other video phone and the mom's just standing there with her two sons awkwardly smiling at Captain Bridges like, what are we supposed to be doing now? Which, it was funny, but it was also like just 20 seconds of dead air on a TV show.
Yeah, that was a little awkward.
The fact...
I also think the thing with O'Neill was a little bit weird, too.
Oh, which part was
with
that?
Bridger and... I think the thing with O'Neill suddenly being telepathic was weird.
Okay.
The thing with Bridger, like, it kind of makes sense. It's, when he's very close to Darwin, and they do explore in later episodes that they say that he has mild ESP abilities, so that could explain that. But O'Neill doing it too, all of a sudden, felt like out of the blue.
Yeah, and that was one of my nitpicky things. Is I was left feeling like this episode was recorded later, but then released sooner. Like maybe the production order was different than the order they aired it in. Which, that's certainly nothing new in sci-fi. I remember Firefly, they totally aired things out of order because they're worried that the premiere episode people wouldn't be interested in. And so I want to say they aired the third episode first, and then they went back and did the first episode, and everyone was just completely confused about what was going on. I haven't seen any of the rest of the first season that I remember. So I don't know if there would have been a time that this episode would have happened more organically if you shuffled a little bit. but I was definitely left kind of like, I was wishing that this episode happened much later in the season. Let me get attached to any character before you threaten to kill one of them off, so that I care about the loss of that character. You know. And then also, I would have liked the telepathy teased a little bit more. Like, he's able to like pick up random things, or even just introducing to the show the concept that, oh yeah, we're doing these extrasensory perception tests. We haven't had anything really show up, but we're curious if exposure, down here where the pressures are different, is having any sort of effect on your crew. And that way, it's a little nugget in my brain. So when all of a sudden O'Neill starts to show telepathy, I kind of have something grounding that to a previous statement,
Yeah, I think actually the next episode deals with the idea of telepathy more in depth. So it would have been better maybe if those two episodes had been switched.
Interesting. I look forward to watching this once we we wrap up here, and I allow myself to watch the episode for next week. And that is how much I'm enjoying this series. As soon as we're done reviewing an episode, I go watch the next one because I'm having so much fun with this series. In terms of outright bad things, was there anything in this episode that you went, oh, no, that shouldn't have been here?
I mean, I can't think of anything like that offhand.
Mm-hmm.
I think the episodes have been pretty solid so far.
Yeah, like I said, the pacing is the closest thing I'd get to calling bad for this episode, and even that wasn't atrocious pacing. It was just, I would have enjoyed a little more tightly paced. Like the first episode, or the first two episodes, were so well done in pacing that when I get an episode that's slightly not great, it stands out more because they've already set their bar so high in terms of writing. So yeah, nothing tremendously bad. Like you said, I don't think I'd give this episode as good as a rating as the first one. Like the first episode, I'd give that an 8. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was solid, good pacing, great music, good acting. This episode, I'd give more around a 7, maybe 6.5 if I was feeling particularly grumpy that day. And I can see, just as a general thought, neither good, bad, nitpicky, nothing, but I can see younger crowds not necessarily being able to handle the slower pace that SeaQuest is offering. Even in the first episode, the pacing was tight, but it also had moments where you just breathed, And I don't think that a younger crowd would necessarily be able to handle those breathing moments, because everything is just now. So kind of all the new shows are like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right. A lot of episodes of SeaQuest, there's not a whole lot of action, which I think is fine because I enjoy watching the characters. But yeah, I can see how certain people wouldn't like that as much.
Yeah, and I guess the show is very much, it seems to be character driven.
Yes.
Which would it be fair to call this more of a kind of a drama adventure as opposed to a actiony adventure show?
Yeah, I'd say so. At least another way that's similar to Star Trek, because I consider a lot of that more drama than action.
Sure, especially DS9 was very much a sci-fi drama, especially as it became more and more serialized and went away from kind of individual standalone episodes. And Thomas Potts is saying, what do I think of the ship design? Let me pull that back up here. So I like the fact it looks like a squid. Like, okay, on a practical level, I think this thing's ridiculous. But accepting it within the framework of the universe, I do enjoy it. I like it. It looks like a squid. And I like how massive this thing is. Because of how massive it is, it really makes me feel like this is a it makes it feel like this is a space show, except underwater. Like I get that same air of mystery and wonder and exploration that I got from TNG and TOS and especially Voyager. My goodness, Voyager was so good where every week it was truly things that no one had ever experienced before because it's a part of the galaxy no one has ever been. And that's the same sort of sense of adventure and wonder that I'm getting from these first two episodes where even though they can quickly get back to civilization because they're just so happen to be right in the neighborhood of whoever they need to talk to for that week, it's still it's still they're on the frontier in the episodes. They're experiencing things that no one had to worry about before. So I do really like the ship that way. I think that if they had done kind of a more true to form ship where it's cylindrical and you have tight spaces and everything else is worrying about keeping things pressurized correctly and lots of support beams to make sure you don't get crushed like a tin can as you dive to these amazing deep depths. It would have left me feeling more claustrophobic, and it could have been an interesting take in terms of if this series took place maybe 50 years sooner when we're just starting to colonize the seafloor and we're just starting to get to these depths. But I really loved how big this ship is. And yes, Thomas Potts, it's confirmed apparently that I like them big. Yep. If it's written on the internet, it must be true, so I can't refute it. John, what's your thoughts on the ship? Having seen the whole series and gotten to know it much better than I have.
Well, I like the ship design as well. I think it's aesthetically pleasing. It's very sleek. It just glides through the water. And it may not be realistic in terms of how big it is, but I think it works for the show.
Yeah.
There have been lots of submarine movies, for example, with more realistic looking submarines where they're cramped inside. I like having something a little bit different. But it's still underwater, and you still have issues that submarines would deal with, but it doesn't feel like such tight spaces.
Thomas is asking or saying that he hopes that I enjoy the musical episode next week. I can't tell if you're joking or not. I think this was a little before every series had to have a single musical episode in them. So I'm pretty sure you're teasing me, but who knows? I'll find out after this stream.
Thomas was asking about the water tubes. I think they did have plan on having a dolphin because it was Captain Bridger who designed the ship in the first place. So I think that may be why those were incorporated into the design.
Yeah, in fact, in the premiere episode, he was talking about being surprised that they actually kept that. But with everything else that had been changed, he thought for sure they would have gotten rid of the dolphin tubes. Because even back then, he was trying to establish communication with dolphins and be able to use them for scientific or military applications. Oh, and you know what? That was one other thing that I did really enjoy in this episode. I love seeing the division between the science officers and the military officers. Or let me rephrase that. That's science personnel and the military personnel. That throughout the whole ship, you see scientists working in the background, testing things out, doing experiments. And then you come to the bridge, and it's just military everywhere. Military's manning the communications. Military's manning the helm. It's like this is the military command center, and they allow civilians in there, but the civilians are clearly a guest in that bridge area. And so I really enjoyed that demarcation that they were going for. I feel like they're really hitting the nail on the head with that. I'm enjoying that.
I guess a tiny spoiler is that the magma buoy will turn up again later on.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. I do enjoy when a series picks up a previous plot point. Obviously a serialized series has to do that, but in something that's more episodic in nature, oftentimes you'll have Riker gaining an alien son and then never referring to him again. So I do enjoy picking past plot points open. And yeah, Thomas, it's almost as if they combine the science and military, you would get Starfleet. or at the very least Starfleet in the TNG era. Well, John, any final thoughts about this episode as we come up to our hour marker?
I think it was a decent character episode. I think he'd be relieved to say that most episodes don't focus on Darwin so much. Usually there's a good balance of focusing on different characters, because like all the old Star Trek, it's basically an ensemble show.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of focus on Bridger so far, but it'll expand out from there. So also, as usual, I like the realistic, at least mostly realistic science that they talk about.
And even though this episode focused on Darwin, he didn't have quite as many lines, and so it wasn't as grating. Like in the premiere episode, whenever he talked, he'd have a really long stretch of talking, and it almost started to grind down the pacing. But then they'd quickly pick up and things would move forward again. So it was a small little blip in an otherwise great show. But in this episode, I didn't feel like Darwin was slowing down any scene that he was in.
It's ironically, because he was sick, I guess he wasn't talking as much.
Yeah, that must be it. and yes, Jeff, I know Starfleet is not a military organization. Jean-Luc Picard. Yeah, I know. We'll talk about that tomorrow on the pub night. Not on SeaQuest night.
So if you play around with the headcanon a little bit, you could probably work this out. The UEO might be the precursor to Starfleet in like 150 years or something.
Sure. In just a little bit, we'll have the third nuclear war, or the World War III, the nuclear war. And from the ashes, the previous UEO organization rises to power and changes from submarine vessels to space vessels. Why not? And in fact, I'm pretty sure that Cochrane was a member of the UEO before the collapse. There we go. I can totally see someone. What's that, John?
I'm just saying that I think in Enterprise they did refer to the government as just the United Earth. So you can kind of string that together if you wanted to.
Yeah.
The United Earth, or is it just the United Earth?
Yeah, drop off the O. I can totally see someone making a fan fiction that crossed SeaQuest with Star Trek. Frankly, I mean, after you get the if you were old enough to be on the bulletin boards when fan fiction for TNG was at its heyday, and everything was just inserting yourself into the into Star Trek, to the point that that's how the Mary Sue got started, because someone was being satirical against all these fan fictions where someone just put themselves into Star Trek and they were the best and everyone loved them and stuff like that. But I like with how prevalent that was, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Star Trek crossover for everything, to be honest. And yeah, Thomas, I'm gonna have to ban you for spoilers in a second. Tell me about the musical, and then apparently they visit a red light district underwater. I don't know, man. You gotta keep this information to yourself. I don't want it ruined. You too, Jeff. I don't want my mind being blown until I see it in the episode. Everything's jestful? No, Jeff. It's blame it on Loki. That's what the hashtag is supposed to be. Hashtag blame it on Loki. Well, with that, we've about hit an hour. So, John, I don't want to keep us up too late here. I really appreciate you coming on to talk this over with me, and I hope everyone's enjoying our weekly review of SeaQuest, because Lord willing, we'll be able to do just so many of these. And I hope that you take the time to enjoy it with us, because, again, it's free on Peacock. You just give them an email address, and you get to watch all this for free. And you can use something like PlayOn to download and watch it at your own pace, in case at some point in the future they decide to not make this free to watch anymore. I'm just saying you can do that if you choose.
Thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Anytime, and we will see you guys next week. How do you feel about this time, John? Did it work well for you?
Yeah, I think this time is good for me.
Okay. I think that we will be using 9:30 just in the future because honestly, this gives me plenty of time to get the kids down, a little less hectic, and that way, Mrs. Life with Matthew isn't kind of being left on her own 2 nights in a row as I do pub night tomorrow night, getting all the kids down. So this worked really well for me, and I'm glad you suggested it, John.
Why not with the whole kids thing?
Yeah. So with that, guys, thank you again, and we will see you next week.
Night.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please share it, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that bell icon to be kept up to date with all the new videos that I release on this channel. And as always, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.